a long week. It's a long morning. We are down, not down. We thankfully were able to give like 3 or 4 of our key leaders a break. Finally, it's been like almost 3 months. So praise God, we're able to give them like a little extra sleep on a Sunday morning. Yeah, and worship crushed it, huh? Car was like, I know some people from PA. I was like, oh, well, cool. Bring them here. And okay. And this week, I had the opportunity to sit down with a young man. And one of the assignments I had given him previously was to work on a budget. He's a young man. He has a child coming, and the dude needs some money. And he needs to, manage his money. And so I told him, work on a budget and whatnot, and we get together in a week or two, we'll talk through your budget. I'm not a financial guru or anything like that, but I'm a little older. And so we talked, and he's like, yeah, I made up a budget. I'm gonna work all summer, and I'm going to pull in about $500 a month to put into savings. I was like, really? All right. I want what you do. And so we talked, and I pulled out this little folder. And it makes me look fancy, even though I'm not. I was in gym shorts. And so I was like, okay, how many hours a week are you working? What's your pay? Uncle Sam. And how much do you owe your grandma? And then how much are your bills? And then I was like, okay, by the end of the summer, then you have this coming up, and you said you were going to, by the end of the summer, have about $1,500. All right, pulled out my calculator app, and da-da-da-da-da. And by the end of our 20-minute budgeting session, we said, dude, if nothing catastrophic happens, you're going to end the summer with $75 in the bank. And I just simply asked him, do you want to bust your butt all summer and make $75 at the end, especially with a child coming? He had a different perspective. He thought that he could just continue on. But it helped talking to somebody, getting a little bit of counsel, and coming out with a different perspective, a different plan of attack, so that he wouldn't end the summer and think, my Lord, I have nothing to show. And so now he's busting his butt looking for a job. And so if you need a hardworking young man, let me know. He'll work your landscaping job and pay him $15 an hour. So, but maybe you've been coming here and this series has been good. You're like, oh, it's fun and whatnot, but dude, I have nothing to overcome. My life is good. My family is good. My job is good. My relationships are good. I have no wrong that really needs to be dealt with. Overcome what? I don't need this series. I've had my battles, but things are good now. I think today is going to show us that you need this series more than any one of us. Because we have an enemy who's cunning, who attacks in ways that are not so obvious. That in our contentment, think about this, in our contentment, through our actions, or whether we have physically said it, in our actions or in our contentment, we say, I don't need God. That's a dangerous place to be. If I were to utter those words and mean it, whether it's through my actions or physical words, think about the magnitude of such a statement. I don't need God. That would send a shiver down my spine. I need God. That's why we value endless growth. We talk about this a lot. This is probably one of my favorite core values that I have. There's no limit to the number of lives that can be reached, but then the second part, the impact that he can have on us. There's a protective element to this core value that I am never content in my walk with Jesus. I'm your pastor, and it doesn't mean I'm a saint. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. I value endless growth because every morning and every night I either want to wake up or go to bed thinking, I can be more like Jesus. I have to put my pants on just like anybody else. I have things that need to be dealt with just like you and I. And so I don't want to be content in my Christian walk. I want to make sure that I am trusting Jesus. There was a seminary probably in the 90s, that there were people studying at this seminary, going into the pulpit, going in to be pastors. And by the end of it, within a few years, they were leaving the ministry because they were having affairs. And so the seminary did this big old research project thinking, what are we doing that what we're producing is sending people into the pulpit and it's ending like that? And there was one phrase that stood out to them when they did their research. Every pastor, most of the pastors, the majority of the pastors had this phrase that they said during the research. It will never happen to me. I thought it would never happen to me. And so their guard was down. And our enemy, who's cunning, who's a deceiver, who's a liar, who creeps in, sneaks in, over time we think we have nothing to overcome, and we've already been overcome by that point. Joshua was in that situation. He thought things were good. He let his guard down, and he was taken advantage of. Here's what it says in the next 6 verses of our text, Joshua chapter 9. It's also in the app. As soon as the kings who were beyond the Jordan of the hill country and in the lowland all along the coast and the great sea toward Lebanon, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, a lot of sites, heard all of this. They gathered together as one to fight against Joshua and Israel. They're coming. But when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they on their part acted with cunning and went and made ready provisions and took worn sacks on their donkeys and wineskins and worn out and torn and mended with worn out patched sandals on their feet, worn out clothes, and their provisions were dry and crumbly. And they went to Joshua at the camp of Gilgal and said to him and the men of Israel, we have come from a far distance. We have come from a distant country. So now just make a deal with us. Make a covenant with us. See, Joshua, they now have 2 military victories, and everybody's getting scared. And so you have these group of people, and they do what you would expect. They gather together, ready for military action. Joshua's, as a military leader, isn't that what you would expect? Wouldn't you expect something like that? If you're leading an army and you're going back after military battle, what you're looking for is people to come at you. But the Gibeonites acted in a way that he wasn't expecting. Their plan was a little bit different. They're going to come to Joshua and not attack them by surprise, but they're going as a nation to lie, to deceive, to act cunning. There was a law, there was a rule that Moses passed along to Joshua. You guys can make deals if they're from a far country, but those in the land, no deals. We're coming in to take over. Because I don't want you to have their customs. We said this in one of the first weeks, that one of their customs was child sacrifice. So they would take their children and sacrifice them to one of their many gods. I don't want you to have any part of them. If they're from a foreign land, they're not going to rub off on you. Foreign land, fine. But in your land, no deal. And somehow the Gibeonites knew about this, and so they set a plan. They lie and they act as foreigners. Now, I'm not going to judge them for the way they act. They've heard about Jericho. They've heard about Ai. They're acting the best way they know how. In fact, if we're going to look at how they're acting and all of the disguise and the ruse that they put, they're actually pretty smart, aren't they? Sometimes our enemies that we think are so dumb are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And so the Gibeonites act real cunning. I have kids. They can act pretty cunning and crafty too. Yeah, but, and they go through this litany of reasons why we should give them an extra brownie or something right before bed, and it makes sense to a 2-year-old. Jimmy Kimball loves this type of stuff. Check out his video about lying
I had
kids.
a good idea recently, and that idea was to hook kids up to what they think is a lie detector. They think that because I lied to them and told them it was a lie detector. Anyway, we've done this a few times now, and people seem to enjoy it, so we went ahead and did it again, this time with an adorable young lady whose name is Joelle. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Now, this is the Truth Fairy. The Truth Fairy is going to hook you up to this machine. Go ahead and start doing that. This is called a lie detector. Do you know what that is?
No.
A lie detector is a machine that is able to know if you're telling the truth or not. Okay? So I'm going to ask you to just tell the truth, the whole truth, and not a half truth. Okay? Okay. Is that comfortable on your head?
Yeah.
Okay, we're off to a bad start. Just it feels a little uncomfortable, right? Okay. What is your name?
Joelle,
Okay, Joelle. How old are you?
5.5.
And what grade are you in?
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten? Do you like all the other kids at school?
A few not.
A few not. Who do you have a problem with?
Once I was playing on the playground, this guy was being really mean to me, so I don't like that guy. His name's Riley.
Riley. Okay, Riley. All right. Anybody else?
No.
Nobody else? Do you secretly love Riley?
No.
A little bit?
Just a little
A
bit.
little bit. Okay, good. Yeah, sometimes that happens when boys will tease girls at school and they're mean to them. It's because they really like them. Did you know that?
No.
So I have a feeling Riley has a crush on you. Have you ever killed anyone?
No.
Okay. Do you think you ever will kill anyone?
No.
Okay, that's good. Do you know who let the dogs out?
Yeah.
Who? Who? Who?
Ooh.
That's weird that it would do that, huh? Are you always nice to the other kids in your class?
Yes.
Not always?
Not always.
What do you do sometimes?
I have a friend named Jaden, and once I tagged on her, because when I was drawing, she just scrabbled on it.
Oh, she scrabbled all over your drawing?
Mm-hmm.
And you tattled on her?
Yeah.
And you felt like that wasn't a nice thing to do?
Yeah.
But why did she scrabble all over your drawing?
I don't know.
That wasn't a nice thing for her to
No.
do. Would you ever scrabble on her
No,
drawing?
never.
You would scrabble on her drawing.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought. All right. Do you have any secrets that you're keeping from me?
Yes.
What are they?
I like Griffin.
You like Griffin? Who's Griffin?
There's a boy in school, and he's really cute.
Oh, he is. His name's Griffin? Does he know you think he's cute?
Yeah. Because once he chased me.
Uh-huh. That's how you know. Did you let him catch you?
No?
But secretly you want him to keep chasing you, don't you?
Yes.
Isn't that always the way? That's why we can't figure women out. I mean, what is it with you people? You know? Yeah. Anything you want to ask the Truth Fairy? Go ahead.
For my birthday, can you buy me a gumball machine?
Okay.
Okay. Good. I'm glad we got that settled. Well, thank you very much. It was very nice to meet you. Thank you for telling the truth most of the time. Thank you, Joel.
He is great. There's a lot of emotional damage that's going to have to be undone after that. Lies can be cute and funny, but we do have a very real enemy as Christians that does sneak in, that does like to come at us in ways that are not so obvious. It happened in the garden back in Genesis 3. We read this in verse 1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the other beasts of the field that the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, did God actually say you shall not eat of any tree in the garden, ... And so here we are. We have this snake that we know to be Satan coming in and tempting Eve and Adam and placing doubt in their head. Did God really say? Here's the truth that you know, but did God really say? And our enemy sneaks in, and it's crafty, isn't it? Crafty is another word for cunning, that he would come in as a snake. What was Adam's job? Adam's job was to name the animals. And so he's comfortable with animals. Animals are not alarming to Adam and Eve because they're around them all the time, and he comes in as a snake. If he was to come in as another human, that would be alarming, wouldn't it? Well, I know he made Eve, my rib, but there's not. It's just the two, and then who are you? Like that would be alarming to them. If he came in as a hovering tree, weird as that would be, so is a talking snake. Like if he came in as a hovering tree, that would be alarming and obvious, and they would dispel that. But he comes in as a slithering little snake. And he puts in doubt. Their guard is down, and he's able to cun them. He's crafty. And so we have a crafty enemy like the Gibeonites. We have an enemy as Christians that the Bible talks about is roaming around like a roaring lion looking to lick you. Looking to give you a kiss. Nope. We have an enemy roaming around this place, roaming around our lives, roaming around like a lion looking to devour, looking to tear you to shreds. Shouldn't we have our guard up? If there was a very real lion in this room, your guard would be up. You wouldn't sit in your seat, content in your seat. Your guard would be up and you would take action. And so our guard better be up. Are we content? Do we have nothing to overcome? Is it because we're not going about God's business as best as we can? Because if we're going about God's business, attacks are going to come. The enemy is going to come. He's a force to be reckoned with, and so we do have to be on guard. He's cunning, and he's going to come in ways that are not so obvious. He's going to make us feel like we are in control, that we should be in control, that we can be content, that we don't need God, that we don't need to apply his word, that we've got this. We become content in our past, content in our present, content in our future, and in everything we're saying, we don't need God. I'm content in life. I'm not content in Jesus because I don't need Jesus, and so our guard is down, and the enemy comes in and overcomes. Verse 7 in our text says this, but the men of Israel said to the Hivites, perhaps you live among us. Then how can we make a covenant with you? And so they do all their work. They know we shouldn't just make a deal with anybody. And so Joshua and the leadership, they ask the right questions. They engage in all the right conversation. The people are talking about how they're from a distant land. They show them the bread. They show them the worn-out clothing, the patches. Everything says we're from a distant land. It's been a long, hard journey. They start talking about Israel's history. And when they talk about Israel's history, guess what they leave out? They leave out Jericho. They leave out Ai because they're from a far land. They would never know what took place just recently. They give this whole disguise. They make up this whole scene, and Joshua's like, yeah, you're not from around here. He doesn't know it, but they've been deceived. I Googled great military deception. And because everything on Wikipedia is true, I know the story that I'm about to tell you is absolutely 100% accurate, but I actually think it is. That we attacked Normandy. Brave men and women lost their lives as we had a pinnacle victory that helped lead to overtaking the Nazis. And one of the ways that we were able to do this is, it said this on this website, that prior to the invasion, British intelligence pulled out all the stops on every double agent that they had, feeding the Germans disinformation about where the invasion would land. Probably the most double agent of the war, Garbo, had Hitler utterly convinced that the invasion would land 100 miles from Normandy. The Allied generals, including Dwight Eisenhower, fed the delusion with false radio traffic, misleading messages, and this is my favorite part, in armies of decoy tanks and trucks that looked utterly real from more than 50 feet away. Many of them were incredibly realistic, full-sized, inflatable vehicles, which the Allies positioned well away from the real camouflage landing force. The D-Day campaign stands as perhaps the greatest, most successful use of deliberate deception in the 20th century warfare. It goes on to say how much some of these inflatable tanks have sold for, how valuable they are now. I thought that was genius. It was risky, but such military deception led to victory. And that's the type of thing that the Gibeonites have now pulled off, because in verse 14 and 15 it says, "So the men took their provisions and did not ask counsel from the Lord." That's important. "And Joshua made peace with them, made a covenant with them to live. And the leaders of the congregation swore to them." They did all the right things by human standards. They asked all the right questions. They believed a believable story. And Joshua was a nice guy, so he makes a deal. Did you catch that important note? He never sought counsel from God. He did all the examination, everything looked good, but Joshua never consults God. So perhaps you don't have a battle to overcome because everything in front of you looks like it makes total sense to you. Have you paused to ask God? You have 2 jobs at play, and you're going to take the one for more money because everything makes sense, the benefits, everything. But have you stopped to consult God? It's May, you're looking at colleges, you're going to go someplace in September. Everything makes sense about this one university. Have you stopped to consult God? We need God in big and small decisions. Joshua gives his word, and he never consults God. We need to consult God when we're giving our word. We need to take our word seriously. In everything, we must be seeking God and not believing the lie that we have it under control. I've got this. My wisdom's got this. No! Apart from God, we're all fools. We need Jesus. The Bible warns against independence. It warns against trusting ourselves, trusting our own wisdom through trials and circumstances. But instead, we seek God's power, but we don't want his wisdom. We're willing to say, God, work mightily in the situation. God, give me $100,000 to get out of debt. I want your power, but God, I want to forgo your wisdom about financial responsibility. Give me the power without the wisdom. And so I think what God is saying to us today is this: counsel helps us overcome. We need to seek God out in every and all situations. Counsel helps us overcome. If we're asking him for wisdom, James talks about he's going to give it generously. So are we seeking after God for wisdom? Proverbs talks about where there's many advisors, you're going to find success. Maybe you're viewing a situation one way and you're in the situation, so it's hard for you to fully see it. Maybe you need the friends that are going to speak hard truth to you and say, you know what? Yes, that person made a kind of a rude comment, but maybe it doesn't have to be as rude as you think it is. And they're going to give you a different perspective. And so the leadership got into a pickle because they didn't seek out God. They find out that the Gibeonites are a 3 days journey away. And so they get themselves into a mess. And I'm a leader. And if verse 18 is ever said by my people, I will hide and cry. Verse 18 says, all the congregation murmured against the leaders. They didn't seek after God, and so you have a people that has lost faith in their leadership. When we fail to seek God, we find ourselves in a bind, and this time the Israelites are complaining for all the right reasons. There are people that have complained, and they've complained, and they've complained, and they've complained, and usually they're just selfish, and they're jerks, and they're idiots, but this time they're right. This time they have every reason to complain, and so Joshua has lost the confidence of his people because he didn't seek God. I found myself in a situation about 2 weeks ago where we had a life group. And I was talking with the leadership, and through talking with the leadership, the young lady that was leading it, we looked at her spiritual gifts, and we said, you know what? God has gifted you in such a beautiful way to talk to. You have the gift of evangelism. You should probably be better suited leading a starting point group. And so she's going to sit in on our starting point group and help us lead more starting point groups for new believers. But then it left a leadership void in the group. And so I thought about it, and I approached one lady, and I was like, here's all the reasons why you should say yes. I call her up. I give her my whole sales pitch. Here's every reason. It makes complete sense. And she says, yes, Jason, I'm all in, but. I was like, I hate big butts, and I cannot lie. I don't like the butt. And she's like, but. And I was like, no. And she says, I'm going to pray. And I was like, fine, I have to say that's okay. And I'm a pastor, and so she prays, and she takes like 4 days to pray. And in the meantime, she was talking to her friends, asking counsel. You know me. Should I say yes to this? Will you pray for me? She was talking to people in the group. Would I be a good fit? Do you see this could be God's will? And then she talked to me a few days later on Sunday, beaming with joy because she sought God out. God confirmed it, and so she moved forward. And I have every ounce of confidence that life group is going to continue on being a great life group. And now we're going to have a great starting point ministry and a great life group because the leaders have considered God. They sought counsel from God, and it's keeping them from crazy situations. Our text concludes like this. Joshua summoned them and said to them, why did you deceive us, saying that you were from very far from you? When you dwell among us, now therefore you are cursed. Some of you shall never be anything but servants, cutters of wood, drawers of water for the house of God. They answered Joshua, because it was told to your servants for a certainty that the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give all the land and to destroy the inhabitants of the land that was before you. So we feared greatly for our lives because of you and did this thing. And now, behold, we are in your hands. Whatever seems good and right in the sight to do to us, do it. And so they become servants of the nation. And what happens? They're in this messy situation. Joshua has put the nation in a messy situation. But here's a group of people. We feared. We know that this is a God to be reckoned with. He's not to make out to be a big joke. The other nations are gearing up for battle. They want to come at you and defeat your God. But no, we fear your God. We have faith in your God. We trust that all this is going to come true. And so we wanted to come to you and humble ourselves. And guess what? They found mercy just like Rahab found mercy. And so a book of great destruction there is. Those that feared God and humbled themselves before God, they received mercy. And so Joshua, in the midst of a messy situation, God gives him wisdom on what do I do with these people that I've made an oath with? I'm going to keep my word. He says, I'm going to make them a part of the sanctuary, the house of God. I want to read you a passage from Leviticus. I loved it when I read it this week. The sons of Aaron, priests, shall put fire on the altar and arrange the wood of fire. And Aaron's sons and the priests shall arrange the pieces, the head and the fat, and the wood is on the fire of the altar, and its entails and its legs shall wash with water, and the priest shall burn of all the altar and the burnt offering and the food offerings with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. I loved that passage. It's weird. But you're not applauding. You're not jumping for joy. Usually, sometimes we get like a amen, and I love that. It makes me feel like, keep going. But Leviticus doesn't usually bring out the amens. But did you catch what is in there? Joshua said, you're going to be woodcutters. You're gonna draw water for us. And where is that going to be used? For sacrifices? In the house of God? So here's a nation that is fearful of God. Their customs, like child sacrifice, that's disgusting. And so here's what I'm going to do as the leader. I'm going to find a way to bring them into the house of God, where they're going to learn about a different way of doing things, where they're going to hear messages, they're going to hear God's teaching, they're going to have to interact with us, and God willing, the Holy Spirit's going to work in a way where they are changed because of it. God shows them this incredible mercy, where now they're going to acquire knowledge of the one true God. I found that so awesome. That my God would take me in my mess, in my deception, in my lies, and say, stop. Come in. There's mercy for you. And for Joshua, in his poor leadership, in his debacle, because he never seeks God, he never seeks counsel, guess what? You have the wood and you have the water. They'll provide it for you, and worship your God. Make sacrifices to your God. God proves to be merciful. So who are today's Gibeonites? Who are appealing? Who's crying out for God's mercy, crying out for God's love? Perhaps we don't see them because we're not asking God for his wisdom. We're not consulting him, saying, God, show me who to share your love with. Or are we more like Joshua in this story, where we have failed to see God altogether? We let our guard down and we were overcome. We walk around with the attitude that it will never happen to me. I've got this. I don't want that attitude. I want to walk around feeling like I am one moment away from falling on my face and making a decision that will alter the rest of my life, because I want my guard up, because the enemy is a liar and a deceiver. And so I want people in my life speaking wisdom to me to help me stay strong. On my own, I am a fool. So I need people speaking into my life to give me godly wisdom. Are you more confident in yourself than you are God? Who's speaking into your life? Now, on a more humorous note, I guess it is. You know, like Graham was telling me this week, that there's like this website that seems really odd, that you can like hire somebody to cuddle you, and to me that's like, I mean, I didn't go home and be like, Ava, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna hire somebody to cuddle me, like. That's a one-way ticket to a kick in the pants. And so, but there's like websites for like crazy stuff like that. And so I came across this one website this week as I was thinking about like ways to get counsel, ways to get wisdom. And I found out that in New York City, anything's okay in New York City, that in New York City, that there is actually a website called needamommy.nyc.com. Don't go there on your smartphone yet. But that's where you can rent a mommy for $40 an hour. And what this lady, the founder of the website, said, that she was working in her jobs and she was interacting with young millennial types, and they were inviting her over to like help with the dishes or help with cleaning or just for dinner in general, because their moms are someplace else or not in the picture or whatnot, and they just needed the counsel of a nice nurturing mother. And so she was providing that for these people, and in her entrepreneurial spirit, she's like, I'm providing this for free. That's a bunch of, so I'm going to charge. And so she makes a website where now people can rent her for $40 an hour. To be that motherly advice in her life, in their lives. My mom's actually here today, so I'm not renting a mommy. But who do you seek counsel from? Who's going to speak wisdom into your life? Perhaps you do need to listen to your mom. Moms are applauding in their spirit right now. Maybe you need to seek counsel through God's word. Maybe you need to seek counsel through prayer. How will you seek counsel? How will you consult God? My challenge for us today is just that. It's ambiguous again. Seek God's counsel. And so what we're doing, it was funny, on my way in here, I had a lady saying, I'm praying for you because you're young. I was like, thanks. Do you see the gray hair? I got kids. Yeah. She's like, but as you get older, don't trust. Rely on God. Trust God, not yourself. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. And as your leader, I'll admit, I don't have a stinking clue what I'm doing. All this, I don't have a clue. But we need God's counsel to move forward, don't we? So how timely is this scripture in the life of our church? And so what we said is this coming week, we're going to cancel all life groups, and Thursday night at Cafe Enigma, we're going to have an hour, 6:30 to 7:30, where we're just going to stop and consult God. We are dreaming big things about the future. We want to move forward. We're thinking about different properties or rentals. We're thinking about different ways of planning churches and how we can affect people with kindness in our community. But it's all stupid and idiotic if we don't consult God. If he's not in it, we fall on our face, and I do not want to fall on my face. I want God to help us to move forward. And so I'm inviting you all this week on Thursday night at Cafe Enigma, 6:30 for 1 hour to consult God with us. And so we're going to close with the song it's not called it I'm a Child of God. That's just a line in it. No longer slaves. Hey, that's the song. I preach. I don't lead worship. And so no longer slaves. Because in the song, we get to be reminded that my identity is not my past, where I failed, I let my guard down, and I was overwhelmed by the enemy. But no, I can let the past be the past, and I can be a child of God and live in the now and move forward in trusting my God. Or maybe you're somebody that walked in here saying, God, and today you heard about somebody that, they appropriately feared God, and God extended mercy. And so you can be a child of God today and receive his mercy because he graciously gives it. So if you're in a rut, maybe you just simply need to be reminded as we close today that you're not God, you're a child of God.